this was interesting though, because I felt like Coach Rule, every time he has a press conference, there's obviously some takeaways, right? He tells you what you need to know.
Yeah.
How big or minor or much of a microcosm do you think his stance was about Fedoni? Because there was a ton in there, right? Because Fedoni hasn't always been a fan favorite. He's received a little criticism. He stayed with it. He knows that he's been courted amongst a few other guys. Like, what did you make of his opportunity to kind of describe the Fedoni thing? Because I love the fact that he kind of went to bat for his guy hanging in there for family.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Thomas also described his passion for Nebraska too. So it's obvious that Thomas likes to wants to be with Nebraska and all the rest. um, yeah, I think as it relates to Fedoni, I think there's so much potential still there, obviously, and he had a nice start to his career last season. The real start anyway, and so I think Rule just wants to remind people. So a strategy is emerging, okay, in the way that Rule wants to use NIL and the way that he wants to build his program. He wants to have a high degree of loyalty to players who are going into their fourth and fifth, and in some cases, 6 years in the program. And he wants to use NIL to keep them around.
Yep.
So that they're the culture keepers. Simultaneously, he's got a huge group of players, and they may all stay, like, through this portal opening. They're not going to stay forever. Like, some of them are going to leave eventually, probably in December or maybe even next spring. But so, like, he really wants to take the 21 to 24-year-olds and really pour into them. And so I think he's trying very hard to send the message to the younger players of the guys that I'm going to hold up and exalt in the program are the guys stuck around and are with us for a long time. And I think he's not just talking to the media in that moment. He's talking to his players. Because I think it's talking to the media and talking about the tampering thing. It's a Saturday. We're busy. You say that another day, and somebody might just say, okay, well, if it's such a big deal, then who's tampering with him? And you don't want to have that conversation. Like, that's not – so the point he was trying to make was to his players, and he was kind of using the media to do that, and that's fine. I don't think he really wanted to get into a big, long discussion about which schools are – trying to get Thomas Fedoni. That would have been a discussion a different day. But yeah, I thought it was a good comment.
You could see where I like what you said about the use of the NIL and the culture keepers. You could tell their greatest, and I've said this from day one, so I like to, maybe I was hearing what I wanted to hear. His greatest skill to combat portal and money and free agency is to make this a place. He wants to make this place family. Like, it's so good here. You shouldn't want to go anywhere else. Like, you can see the strategy.
For sure, yes. So I think there's certainly a culture that he wants to build. He does have the facilities in which to build it, right? So they've got nice stuff too. It's so you've got that part. It's not just a bunch of good people, but there's good stuff. The winning needs to come alongside of it because there would come a point where you can't blame a kid for wanting to go to a winning program. It does need to win. Like, the winning does need to come along. But I think he feels like that's going to happen. So it's not something that he has to dwell on much at this moment. Yeah, I think that's the strategy that has emerged. Now, again, there's more guys on the team that are going to play. And at this moment, I think everybody's going to stick it out maybe a beat longer than they normally would, because they kind of like what the guy's doing and they kind of want to see if they're going to fit in. But there will come a point, again, maybe it could be in the next couple of days, but more likely in December or next spring, where there's going to be 7 to 10 guys that are, freshmen or sophomores, and they're like, I'm not going to play. So, you'll see that move on. But I think for the time being, they're able to keep it together because it's a fun place to be a part of.
Sam, I'm curious, and we'll get to quarterbacks here in a second, but I'm curious if there was any large takeaways you'd like to make from the spring game. I know we try and downplay whether it's important, whether it's not, whether, how much it matters, how not to overreact. But is there anything that you just walked away with, you go with positive, negative, or otherwise, that you felt like you actually learned something?
Good perimeter blocking at times. Good interior line blocking on some of those inside zones. I thought the backs ran downhill. They weren't trying. There wasn't a ton of dancing. I appreciated Emma Johnson's, I think, first run of the game. You know, it was only a 4-yard
He
run.
slammed that thing in there, didn't he, with a burst?
Yeah. I like a good 4-yard run when you need 3, and that was that. You know, so like I think you have a tone setter. I thought Dowdell had a couple of nice runs. It was a Mazuka that bent back that one run for 15. So like they seem to be reading that particular play well. Hard to take away for defense. What I wrote in my rewind today about the defense is, seems like they got a lot of guys who are kind of the same size. They're maybe a little undersized, and the group that was out there was a little inexperienced. And so I felt like what you were watching were guys that didn't quite exactly know where they were going, and at times the offense knew where they were going, and sometimes when that happens, the offense, I thought, kind of took it to the defense physically a few times. And as your defenders learn more about what they're supposed to do, they'll look better doing it. The defense is a little undersized, and I think they're comfortable with that because they're going to be a speed group, and they're going to get it done that way. I still think there are teams, I don't know exactly which ones, that are going to, like Michigan, that are going to say, hey, we're just going to put 2 tight ends out there, and we're going to ram it down their throat for 2.5 hours, and at the end of the game, they're going to be tired because they're just not as large as we are. And I think that's something they're going to have to continue to work on, because I think there's, it's a great defense and a neat scheme. They're just slightly undersized because they're not going to get in those battles for those top 5-star defensive tackles. I don't think they think they're going to win those battles anyway, and they're just not going to get in them as much. So as a result, they're a little smaller. But those are the takeaways I had other than the quarterback.
Sam, do you think that's part of the reason they want to play so many guys on defenses to combat what you just talked about with the Michigans of the world or the Iowas or whoever wants to kind of pound it down their throat, and they go, okay, yeah, the first line of guys might be tired, but we're going 23, 24 deep here on defense. We've got fresh legs for you pretty much at every – is that how you combat the physicalness of a team like Michigan or Iowa?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable – it's probably a discussion, to be honest with you, that's slightly above my head. I think Tony White has in his mind all the things that they can do. And let's be honest, they had a good run defense last year. Mm-hmm. So statistically, their run defense was fine. Again, like there's certain components of any defense. Like if you're an offense and you're looking at the defense, short of 2011 Alabama and 09 Nebraska, you're going to have ideas about how to attack. And so as I'm thinking about how I look at Nebraska's defense, that's the things that I think about. Most teams don't want to run the ball 40 times against that kind of defense because it's a pain in the butt. Because they're gonna get you behind the line of scrimmage 4 or 5 times in the course of a game and put you behind the chain. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's probably things about that defense that is hard to stop. And then when you're just a little undersized wherever you're at, if the offense knows what it's doing, they're going to play with more of a leading edge. That's why your experienced guys, even if they're a little undersized, need to know what they're doing. And a lot of those guys didn't play, so that's why maybe the defense looked the way it did.
I think, Sam, what do you think about this? I'm looking at this is a really good case study for everybody, the fan base, the recruitniks, the coaching staff, with the defensive backs, the secondary, because generally speaking, it was like, gosh, they have a ton of numbers and they've got a lot of good pieces and young athleticism. So you need to get to the development piece, right? Then it was, okay, hey, we're going to need some depth. Then the coaching staff has a very consistent theme. Coach White said, if you want to play in this secondary, you need to be able to, you have to start with the 2 T's, toughness and tackling. Then, you get to the football IQ and athleticism. Coach Cooper is a flat out dog back there. He's constantly talking about toughness and being the hammer and not the nail. when you look at this young group and you're kind of watching it evolve, what story do you think we'll be telling in 8 months with accruing bodies and development as it relates to playing in that secondary?
I think you're going to see that a lot of guys can play, that they've recruited that position well. I think that's been a pretty keenly recruited position, in my opinion. They've got they've got guys that can do a bunch of different things. They've got some size. I think they've got speed. I think they've got toughness back there. It's going to take some time, I think, to figure out who's going to emerge and play 50 snaps a game.
We kind of took Phelan and Omar Brown for granted.
Right. Those two guys. And then, again, Hartzog and Buford are going to play a lot. Hartzog certainly is now. I mean, he, with Blyhill being whatever that injury is.
I was hoping to see him play that field safety. I hope some young corners can emerge.
Yeah, it's possible. It's going to be challenging.
I know.
For somebody to come along, unless they can add somebody in the portal, which they may very well do. I mean, I think they have the flexibility to make that happen. So, I think there's going to be, it's just going to take a long time, a little bit of time to figure out exactly who's going to be where. I watched the spring game and, one of the numbers wasn't right in the roster. People thought Rex Guthrie was getting beaten there on the deep throw to Jalen Lloyd, and that wasn't the case. And I don't even think Rex played.
So people found out in a hurry. Nebraska fans take the spring game seriously. It is a very difficult broadcast to do. You have to really get in there and be in the weeds, man. It's a tough broadcast.
You mean Elijah Judy didn't catch a touchdown pass on Saturday?
Stop it.
Well, yeah.
It's just hard, man.
A little different, but
it's just hard.
There was a couple circumstances where it felt like DeAndre Barnes was on the field a lot, and I think he did some good things. Again, it's a lot of numbers, like you said. They obviously need a fall camp to figure it out. They're going to have to. They're probably going to get a good deal in the first two games. So UTEP and Colorado are both probably going to throw the football quite a bit, and so those defensive backs will get a nice workout. They're going to play teams during Big Ten play that are not going to throw the ball.
Yeah, because they played without Giff, Hartzog, and Singleton. Mm-hmm. Those are probably their starting 3 free safeties. Now you can utilize Buford in a couple different spots. Maybe if you move Hartzog, but we did an exercise last week. If you're going to play in the low 20s by UTEP, which is what I've been saying, 8 of those guys you think would be in the secondary. It sounds like a low number, but it might be hard to get to. Right. I'm just kind of doing the numbers in my head.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to play 8 D line. You're going to play 8, 9, D, and I'm including the Jack D line. You're going to play 5 or 6 linebackers. Subs. Like that secondary is going to have to, and no better teacher too, because I just, and I'm biased, right? Full disclosure, like I love Coach Cooper's mentality because he's a tough guy, right? He's not flash and dash and all this cutesy stuff. He's like, listen, man, you it's a messy place, and you got to be tough in that defense. I'm excited to kind of watch that group unfold because they're going to have to find some fellas.
They are, for sure. And who's the third game? Northern Iowa? I don't know what Northern Iowa's going to do. There's going to be some teams that Nebraska plays next year that are going to be heavy run. But they're also going to play, USC's going to throw the ball a lot. I expect UCLA to be heavy run with play action off of that with their quarterback.
Wisconsin will be interesting.
They certainly want to throw the football, so they'll probably throw it some. I think Purdue is willing to do whatever it takes. I actually like a lot of the things Purdue did last year. Their schedule was too hard. And then Rutgers is, and I watched their spring game too. Rutgers is probably going to run the ball a lot, and Rutgers is an interesting team if you want to watch another spring game.
They're going to be good.
They are, and they're similar teams. They're built on very similar ideas. I think the head coaches have different personalities. But I think if you got Matt Rule and Greg Schiano in a room, and you said, "Tell me your top 10 principles," I think most of them would be the same. And Rutgers might be a little ahead in some areas of Nebraska, and that makes sense. Schiano's been there for 5 years. They may be a little bit ahead in a few things, even though Nebraska beat them, in 20 and 21. If Rutgers' roster has improved, then that'll be an interesting game when they come to Lincoln, because I think they will take Nebraska to the wire. It'll be 17-14, something like that.
Sam, got a handful of minutes left here with you, so got to move over to the quarterbacks before we let you go here. Let me put it to you this way. Who outperformed your expectations the most on Saturday out of that group?
Interesting way of putting it.
I like
think,
that too.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think my answer's supposed to be Harburg, but I'll be honest.
I mean, whatever your answer is.
What do you mean it's supposed
to be? Doesn't have to be my answer.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm supposed to say, Harburg surprised me. I think what he did was fine. I think he did a nice job. I thought Dylan did a good job based on everything that was all the eyes on him and all the stuff that had been said, which I'm sure he's heard. The fact that his family is watching all that, and he knows. I mean, he's an aware kid. He knows he's wearing all that, and he has to go out there and deal with all the attention. And I think he's given all those things. I think he did pretty well. I think he should feel good about the work that he did. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but some of the things that it pleased me about Rayola's work is that when he threw the ball to the sidelines and he got it out quick, the balls were where they needed to be, and he threw a nice pass to Hall, and it kind of brought Hall back inside where the hole was that he could run into, and I thought he handled some of the. I thought he handled the second throw to Alex Bullock nicely, the corner route, and I thought that the ball that he fired, the first ball he fired into Bullock was a good throw, and the one he threw to Barney was a very good throw and a gusty throw, and things that you have to do in this sport in order to move the football. Heinrich Harburg had a very similar throw, and it wasn't on target. So I thought Rayola handled himself well. And I think he deserves some credit for having done that as a true freshman, 18-year-old, not having the advantage of running. So if you go back and watch the Adrian Martinez spring game in 2018, I think he ran for 100 yards and nobody could touch him. So it was kind of like, that looks good. Dylan had to do all that just throwing the ball, and that's pretty good. Like he didn't have the luxury of running around and not having anyone touch him. So I thought he did a nice job for all the variables considered.
I think I'm most impressed by the fact they have the right mental makeup in that room. The character and quality of people in that room for what goes on in this state and how they're all a similar age it's revealing itself, right? They just keep getting better at their craft, and that's really all you can ask until meaningful Saturdays roll around. You just have to keep getting better, and that they appear to be guys that are attacking the competition.
Oh, absolutely. And I thought Danny did some nice things on the 2-minute drill.
I'm telling you, I would make the case. He may have had the best throw of the day, and there were some doozies.
Which one was that?
It was the corner route to Lloyd during the 2-minute drill, where his anticipation and his timing, it was a great read. Lloyd's took 2 more steps, that ball's in the air before he even thought about coming out of his break, and it was right there. Right there.
Yeah,
like it's a tough throw.
Yeah, I think Danny identified things quickly. He also identified the throw to Barney was a bad throw and it was incomplete. But I think Danny identified things quickly. I thought Harburg's a good kid. I like Harburg a lot.
Me too. He's a guy I would hang out with.
Yeah, it's pretty evident that he's a good guy. Really got, took so much abuse physically last year in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And on some level, I think maybe he's ready to stand up for himself a little bit and say, hey, there's a moment where a quarterback, and I think Dylan probably has this, where he's able to say, that ain't what I'm here to do. And And I think Harbaugh just did everything he was asked to do last year, and I appreciate that. And I think the coaches could have put him in slightly better position. And I think this spring that's happened. And so I think he's reaping the results of the fruits of better development from a quarterback coach on hand.
And it's a little early, but the trend is definitely in the right direction. And I don't know if Coach Rule's going to be an I told you so guy, but it appears he made a pretty good decision with Coach McGuire. Those guys are better, and it's a guy that's had a great spring we don't even talk about. He got back in the room full time, and he looks good in Bonner. Like, Coach McGuire appears to be really good at what he does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he is a good coach. I think they have good young coaches. I think Rob DeVorchek's a good coach. I think they've got, they're teachers. I think Rule demands that they're really good teachers. And one thing I don't think you would ever question with Garrett McGuire is just commitment to finding the best way to develop his guy.
Yeah.
Like I think he's the son of a coach. I doubt that McGuire is like trying to do anything other than getting better at his craft as it relates to his job. And so like I think he would, and the other advantage is he has a lot of young guys in the room. And so it's not like they're going to have some sort of preconceived notion about what it's supposed to be like. I think Jalen Lloyd's gotten better. I think, I think Corey Barney obviously brought some things to the table when he got here, because that's a pretty good picture that he presents on the field. But, he's I think doing a good job. Again, it's a good team. And if you put the schedule together, it looks like a team that should win some games. Now they just got to go do it, and healthy. They got to stay healthy. Like,
yeah,
they can't really afford many more. They can't afford any injuries to the running back room. Emmett Johnson, he's a dependable kid. He's a good kid. You put bubble wrap around him. He can't get hurt. Got to keep him healthy. Got to keep Dowdell healthy. There's things he can do. And assume Gabe Irvin's coming back from the hip tear. 110%. So you got to keep Dowdell healthy for the short yardage stuff. So hopefully they can keep healthy there. That's important. And they got to keep healthy at tight end. Sidoni and Borkircher got to stay healthy because those are their two best tight ends clearly. And those two guys should have nice years if they stay healthy.